Today I have something controversial that especially Brexiteers won't like, because a study published in the journal Intelligence on November 24th found that people who voted to leave the European Union in the 2016 referendum were more likely to score lower on cognitive ability tests than those who voted to remain. The study, which analyzed data from 3,183 couples in the UK, found that individuals with higher cognitive skills, as well as those with spouses possessing higher cognitive abilities, were more likely to vote Remain. The researchers used a variety of cognitive ability tests, including measures of verbal fluency, spatial reasoning, and memory, and they found that people who scored lower on these tests were more likely to have voted to leave the EU. The effect was particularly strong for people with lower levels of education. The study's authors argue that their findings suggest that cognitive ability played a role in people's decision to vote for Brexit. They say that people with higher cognitive abilities may have been more likely to understand the complex arguments for and against remaining in the EU, while those with lower cognitive abilities may have been more swayed by emotional appeals. This study, of course, has been met with some criticism, with some experts arguing that it's difficult to draw casual conclusions from the data. They say that it is possible that other factors, such as personality or political ideology, could explain the link between cognitive ability and voting behavior. Despite the criticism, the study's findings add to a growing body of research that suggests that cognitive ability can play a role in political decision-making. Previous studies have found that people with higher levels of education and cognitive ability are more likely to be politically informed and engaged, and they are also more likely to support policies that are based on evidence and reason. The study's findings also have implications for understanding the rise of populism in the UK and elsewhere. Populist leaders often appeal to voters' emotions and prejudices, and they may be particularly successful in attracting those with lower levels of cognitive ability. Overall, the study provides further evidence that cognitive ability can play a role in political decision-making. More research is needed to understand the specific mechanisms by which this occurs, but the findings suggest that cognitive ability may be an important factor in explaining the rise of populism and other forms of political extremism. But anyway, so many people fall for the false promises of the Brexiteers until today. Have you ever wondered how the UK, based firmly in the North Atlantic, managed to join the free trade area known as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP? I talked about this yesterday. After all, as the name suggests, it's for countries around the Pacific. Have a look at the Pitcairn Islands. Population at the last count was 47. Still British, the Pitcairns are in the Pacific, and so therefore the UK is a Pacific power. And thank God the Brexiteers had the genius and the foresight to realize that the Pitcairn Islands would help them forge a post-Brexit economic powerhouse with the Pacific Rim's nations. Except that despite what Kemi Badenoch says, the CPTPP is not much of a powerhouse. The latest work by the Office for Budget Responsibility, I talked about this a few days ago, that's an independent government department, has found that the Pacific trade deal is worth just 0.04% of economic growth to the UK over 15 years, or 0.0026% a year. Unfortunately for Badenoch, that is half what the government claimed as the benefits of the deal, which was already a paltry amount compared to what they gained from the EU. And this assessment helps to explain why the Tories hate the OBR, because it has an unfortunate tendency to tell the truth. And it's also a perfect example of why the government's claims of post-Brexit trade bonanzas are all total tosh. Take the latest triumph by their trade secretary, a memorandum of understanding with Florida. The government's own press release on the deal is laughable, and it tries to equate it with membership of the EU. For instance, it says Florida has a GDP of over 1.1 trillion pounds, the fourth biggest of any US state and roughly the same size as Spain. Without pointing out that they were in a single market with Spain, which gave them unlimited and frictionless access to its whole economy, not just an MOU, which is little more than some vague talk about being nice to each other. And the press release then goes on to say, after today's signing, the UK will have MOUs with 7 US states: Indiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Utah, Washington, and Florida, with a combined GDP of 3.3 trillion pounds, just under the GDP of Germany. You might have seen my long video on these MOUs. These mighty deals will make up for the collapse of trade with Germany, of course. MOUs with individual US states are not real trade deals and can never be. And there's a simple explanation for why that's true, and that is called the American Civil War. As you might remember from history lessons, the US fought a bloody civil war to stop states seceding and trying to create a new country made up of more powerful individual member states with their own sovereignty. Well, Washington, D.C. won, and that is why Washington, D.C. and the federal government get to negotiate, agree, and sign international trade deals. For instance, a trade deal like the one that the Brexit supporters told everyone they would have with the USA the second they left the EU, the trade deal that the Daily Express said in 2019 would be signed within days, the trade deal that is not on the cards, whoever gets into the White House, the trade deal that would never make it through the Senate, and the trade deal that still would not be enough to make up for leaving the EU. That trade deal. And so they have the national embarrassment of Badenoch desperately trying to trumpet MOUs with the individual states of the USA as if they are really trade deals, as if they are worth billions, as if they make up for Brexit, and just as if the Confederacy won the Civil War. But maybe we should be grateful that the Trade Secretary limits herself to these useless and self-abasing rituals rather than trying to negotiate real trade deals. Because the ones with New Zealand and Australia, the only really new post-Brexit ones worth mentioning, are so bad for the UK that their Antipodean cousins are actually laughing at us about them. They will add some 0.08% to the UK economy over 15 years, much of it at the expense of their own farmers. And the benefits are so small because they do so little trade with Australia and New Zealand, and most of it is tariff-free already. And as one expert put it, sure, Australia has agreed to eliminate its own tariffs, but that is somewhat like landlocked Switzerland offering to eliminate its navy. The deal was negotiated by a certain Liz Truss, by the way. All in all, the trade deals that the Tory government has agreed to are hardly worth mentioning. They were signed in haste to get the publicity, badly negotiated, and their influence on the British economy is so small, it's virtually unmeasurable. But let's see what will happen with future promises. Because now it's said the British government wants to stimulate the domestic industry with several billion pounds. And this business minister, Kemi Badenoch, announced government investments worth £4.5 billion in strategically important industries. And of this, 975 million goes to aerospace. The money will flow into the development of zero-emission vehicles, as well as into energy-efficient aircraft equipment, at least according to a statement. And Great Britain wants to present itself as a pioneer in green energy and attract investors. With regard to government subsidies in other countries, such as the so-called Inflation Reduction Act in the USA, Minister Badenoch emphasized that Great Britain would not allow itself to be drawn into a subsidy fight. For those of us who believe in the power of the market, private sector capital investment is key to further growth in our manufacturing industry, securing jobs and growth in the UK. And Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the Conservative government was going full throttle to support British businesses and make the UK a world leader in manufacturing. Yeah, they're kind of world leader in everything when you listen to them. The plans would give the industry certainty for growth and investment and lay the foundation for more jobs and opportunities for people across the country, according to Sunak. But we will see what these promises bring. I hear them say so often, world-beating, world-leading. They must have some brainwash in that government that beats these words into your mind, that you can never say a sentence without them or something. I have no clue. But nevertheless, if you want to see something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.